Howdy folks, just want to give you a little bit more information about how you can achieve the spacing in your typography settings to match what's in a comp. So you can see I'm underway on bringing about this mockup to life in this browser over here. And I've got the basic type styles in place for the first couple of elements here. And I want to try to start to also hone in on the spacing that's going on. So one place I can start is by selecting an element and using the spacing here, which is the spacing between blocks. So that will work perfectly for elements like this where we have multiple blocks, and the only way we're getting the spacing that's here is by that setting. So if we tweak this up and down, you'd see that spacing change. So that is the exact kind of setting that we can use to achieve the space between our paragraphs over here. And you can see that's what I have in place with the margin bottom on those paragraphs of 1.2 rem. Okay, and that's created the exact space that we want between paragraphs. If you see that I line these up, they're just the way they need. So we've got our leading in place, and we've got some margin bottom, and that's helping us get there. But you can see that even though some of these other elements have that same setting, they all have that one, those 12 pixels below, that same setting on these other elements, you can see I have it in here, is not leading to the exact same space over here in the browser. So why is that? Well, you can imagine that in here, that's the only thing contributing to this space. But up here, the space here is a combination, well, it's precisely determined by how far we've placed these two boxes apart from each other. Okay, so we're going to need to increase that spacing, and we can't just go with that 12 pixel spacing. So one thing you can do as a starter from there is to select one element, hold the Option key, and hover over another element, and that will give you the space that those two boxes are, one from the other. So it's taking the bottom of that top box and the top of the next box down and saying that's 48 pixels apart. So that's the next value we could try. Let's try it as bottom margin on that H1. So if we go in here and change this to be 4.8, oops, there we go. Let me go over here and refresh. Now you can see that's pushed that to just about the right spot. And if I align them up perfectly, you can see that we're about as close as we could be. Okay, if that doesn't get us there, sometimes you still need to adjust the value by hand. Okay, let's go ahead and take the next element down as our next example. So here we have this lead paragraph, and it looks like it's 20 pixels away from the list below it. So let's go to our lead and adjust our bottom rem to 2 rem. That would be 20 pixels. Okay, and that's led us just to where we want to be. Okay, so far that technique is working just fine. But let's give ourselves a more interesting example. Here on this element, you can see that there's a little bit more space below here than there was at the bottom of this box and this box. There's any number of reasons for that. But the bottom line is that sometimes our designers can be a little bit more loose with the sizing of boxes, and so measuring this space here is not going to be as reliable as we'd like. See how it's saying 26 pixels? Well, if I go and say, let's put that below UL, so let's go UL, margin, bottom, 26 rem. Okay, that's going to increase the space, but it's not enough. So we could begin to kind of adjust this by eye, maybe it's more like 3 rem. Okay, and you can see we can continue to push it down by just comparing them, holding them side by side. That's totally fine. Let me give you another tool that you can use on a Mac. The Command-Shift-4 keyboard shortcut gives you this little cursor pointer that if you click and drag, it actually creates a screenshot. Okay, but if you noticed when I did that, it actually also gives me the dimensions of the box that I'm creating, and it can act as kind of a ruler to just kind of line up side by side. So if I want to use those features, I just need to hit escape before I let go of my cursor, and then it'll avoid taking the screenshot. Okay, so using that tool, I can basically compare the baseline of this line to that line and see that it's about, let's see, I've got to be more precise to get right on there. You can see it's about 72 pixels. Okay, so if I go over here and compare it to what I have right now, looks like I have something like 58 set. So 72 minus 58 is 14. Okay, so I need 14 more pixels of space below these ULs. So we're going to add, and that would be 4.4. Okay? Alright, so there I did it a little bit more mathematically, and it still looks like it may be 1 off, so I'm going to nudge that down to 4.3. And that looks very nice. Okay, so you see how we're aiming to be as precise as we can with this? And sometimes that's as simple as using the setting there. Other times, it's a matter of measuring the value here in Sketch with the click, hold, Alt, and hover. And at the end of the day, it might just come down to using some other techniques or just adjust doing it by hand. But in the end, what we're striving for is to match that spacing as closely as we can. All right, good luck.